Okay, we will open up the city council special meeting and work session for Tuesday, June 14th. And the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Yeah.
yes,
Yes. First, we'll start with our public comment phase. I will ask if there's anybody in the audience wishes to make a public comment. And if there's anybody online that would like to raise their hand for public comment. Okay, not seeing anybody. We have a host of folks to introduce. I'm gonna turn that over to Jason. Oh, Jason can't? Oh,
He's on Zoom, but he is.
just wave at us.
If you would do the introduce.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So we've got lifeguards for our 85th summer consecutively of patrolling Cannon Beach. Our team here will introduce themselves. I'm Jesse Parker, and I've had 5 seasons of open water lifesaving.
My name is Kimber Parker, and I've also had 5 seasons of open water lifesaving. And this is Ansel Parker, and he's had 1 season.
Hi, I'm Abby. This is my second year.
I'm Katie. This is my 4th summer with lifeguards.
I'm Nalu. It's my first summer with the lifeguards.
My name's Henry. This is also my first summer on Cannon Beach Lifeguards.
I'm Jesse Williard. This is my 16th summer lifeguarding. I just want to compliment our crop of watermen. They're all really excellent. I'm looking forward to this year. They all have great experience in our local waters.
I'm Leland Anderson. I've been worked with the fire department. I've been there about 5 years, and this is my first year working on the beach with these guys.
He also works with us.
I am Shauna White. I used to lifeguard for 6 years on the beach and been with the department 8 years. And so I guess this will be my 7th year now lifeguarding.
Jason Smith with the fire department for 1.5 years. This is my first year doing the lifeguarding thing. So it's been awesome. Looking forward to more.
My name's Matt Williams. This is also my first year lifeguarding, and I've been with the Cannon Beach Fire Department for about 1.5 years now.
Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Brett Bowman. This should be my 14th year with the program. I took last year off from the program so as to dedicate more time to one of the local area hospitals, during the height of the pandemic. Happy to be back on the season this year for my 13th season.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana, and this is my first year with the Cannon Beach Lifeguards.
Oh, we do have one more guard watching our beaches right now in the tower, Dexter Savage, and I think this is his fourth season with us. So I just want to include him.
Very impressive. Thank you, folks, for coming, showing up, the new guys, and for the fire department for double timing and doing good stuff.
oh, there are people behind.
I know, but this is the lifeguard section first.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you guys for keeping our beaches safe. In the back row, we have somebody else special.
Yes, is Chief unavailable?
Well,
No, I'm available.
All right.
So yeah, thank you to the lifeguards, and an excellent addition we've added this year with the fire department, who will be substituting but also helping us out a lot. And I think that's going to be a great partnership. For our parking aides, we have one that's not present tonight, Daniel. He's been with us for 7 years, and we really enjoy having him. And he's been a great mentor for teaching these new ones. We have, if you can stand as I call your name, Nathan Howes.
Hey, Nathan.
And this is Nathan's first year, and Maria Solario Orta,
Yeah,
and also Tyler Bear.
Tyler.
Those 3 are Clatsop Works employees that we hired with the college, partnered with the college. And that's a great opportunity for us to work with locals and give them the opportunity to get involved in law enforcement. And then Lindsay McCarthy is a high school student that we're working with as well. So we have lots of fresh faces this year to work with Daniel, and we do have a 6th position if anybody knows someone who's interested in joining us.
Got a volunteer. Yeah. Great.
Yes, you want to join, don't you? Okay, well, thanks for what you folks do. Thank you, appreciate it.
For everybody, hey.
Now, Jason probably told you you had to stay for the whole meeting, because he usually has to, but you don't, but thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Yep, thank you. That's good crew, Jason. Good job.
They're always a great help for us during the summertime.
Okay, that's all our introductions. So we will move on to our first resolution. This will be, the revenues. So Lauren, who's doing it?
We have that script for this one.
Oh, yeah, I have a script. Hang on. Public hearing. This time pursuant to ORS 1770I. I will open the public. Maybe that's not an I. I will open the public hearing in order to give the citizens of Cannon Beach the opportunity to comment on the use of the state revenue sharing fund for the city of Cannon Beach's budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Staff, please present your report.
Okay, this is an annual housekeeping matter. The state of Oregon requires us to have council authorize that we want to receive state revenue sharing, and pretty sure we do. We had a public hearing at the budget committee as well. And so we've had 2 opportunities now to have public comment. And so now it's just a matter if the council wishes to approve resolution number 2217. I also have a schedule attached, which shows what we discussed at budget committee. The highway fund taxes were estimated to receive $114,477. That goes in its own fund, the roads fund. And then the remaining shared revenues go into the general fund. And those are discretionary revenues. The highway fund taxes can only be used for street lighting, maintenance, and street paving type activities. So between those 2 funds, we are estimated to receive $194,887.
Okay. Is there any public comments? Okay, not seeing any. There's no further discussion. I will close the public hearing at this time. I need a motion.
Move to approve resolution number 2217 for the purpose of declaring the city's election to receive state revenues for fiscal year 22 and 2023.
Second. Council discussion. Oh, Jennifer?
Counselor Hursley?
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Mayor Seidel?
Yes. That motion passes. Thank you, Lori, for that one. Next is pursuant to ORS 294-453. I will open the public hearing in order to give the citizens of Cannon Beach the opportunity to comment on the budget approved by the City of Cannon Beach Budget Committee for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Report.
Okay, as you all know, being part of our budget committee, you are the 5 members of council, and then we have 5 members who are part of the community. So we have normally 10 members. We were a little short this year, but we did meet in 2 sessions during May to review the budget proposed by staff. And
The amendment.
so part of the public hearing process then is to allow the public to comment on the approved budget. And if council wishes, they can approve the resolution here that represents the approved budget by the budget committee. And if you wish to do that, we have a motion here for you. However, there is an alternative tonight. If you so choose, there by Oregon statute, you are able to change or amend the budget that is presented to you in the committee. And so those are your pretty much two options. If you do wish to amend the budget, we will bring back a revised resolution at another meeting prior to June 30, because as you all know, we must have a budget in place July 1st to continue city operations. The approved budget has total appropriations of $42,984,106 for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023.
Hey, let me ask, because should we ask for public comment before we make amendment or after we make amendment?
Before, because now you're opening the hearing right now.
Okay. So I will ask if any member of the public wishes to comment on approved budget fiscal year 2022-2023. Anybody in the house or anybody online? They raise their hand. Okay, not seeing any. I will. There's no further discussion. I will close the public hearing at this time. Council.
This is the appropriate time to make a motion to amend the budget.
Yes.
And I move to amend the 2022-23 approved budget as submitted to council by the City of Cannon Beach Budget Committee on May 16th, 2022, as follows. In the water fund, change water charges to reflect a 2% increase in the amount of $29,079. Change transfer to water reserve to $410,800 and change ending fund balance to $194,907. In the water reserve fund, change transfer in water fund operations to $410,800. Change the contingency to 15% in the amount of $595,800. In the wastewater fund, change the wastewater charges to reflect a 6% increase in the amount of $89,962 and add a transfer from the general fund in the amount of $50,959. In the general fund department, non-departmental, add a transfer to wastewater in the amount of $50,959 and change the ending fund balance to $724,805.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Jennifer.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Council President Benefield.
Yes.
Counselor Brizley. Yes. Mayor Seidel.
Yes. Okay. Like that, I think that ends this portion of the budget. We'll move that to the next scheduled meeting. Correct?
Which is the 21st.
21st.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the procedure, what are we going to do on the 21st?
Adopt a resolution to appropriate
Okay.
the budget as amended.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item. Consideration of resolution 1919 for the purpose of approving increases and decreases to fiscal year 122 budget by making an interfund transfer and appropriation.
And so we're all feeling the pain of high gas prices right now. So it's the RV park. So at the time when we were budgeting our overhead costs to run the RV park, we didn't really have a clue about, the rising price of fuel. So I waited a little while just to kind of see how we might end up, and we really do need a change to the budget to allow for those increased costs of purchasing the fuel, even though we're selling it for a higher cost too. Oregon budget law only looks at what you're appropriating, and so in order to spend extra money that you didn't appropriate earlier, we need a budget amendment. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, that's just what I mentioned here in my staff report now, so it's really affecting us. So I would recommend that we make an adjustment to that.
Are you being rather conservative about the investment? Or is this maybe allowing for quite a bit of further escalation of gas prices?
Well, at the time I prepared my report, I consulted with Sean, and I think we're going to be okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will.
Okay.
I think I'm conservative enough to allow for what's happening right currently.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Are we good with the next year budget? To fit this same,
Well, hopefully things will, I don't know. It's a good question. We might just have to address that, in the following year as well, unless things hopefully go down. But I don't know.
How many times a year do we purchase fuel?
We purchase it like once a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good.
means it's selling. Okay,
Or maybe every other week. It's often.
a motion?
Oh, sure. Move to approve resolution number 2219 for the purpose of approving increases and decreases to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget by making an inter-fund transfer of appropriations for municipal purposes of the city of Cannon Beach for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
Jennifer?
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Mayor Slidell.
Yes. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Next, we move to our regular show or an action item. Water resiliency project. Tara.
Council. On April 5th of 2022, council approved the request for proposals for the phase 1 of the water resiliency project. The project is installation of 3 seismic valves, 1 on each of the city's water tanks, as well as isolation valve controls, vault piping connections, and site improvement on the main reservoir site. Site improvements would mitigate damage associated with dangerous flood impact should the tank fail during a seismic event. The city has been approved for a loan in the amount of $586,000 through the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund for phase 1 of the water resiliency project. This loan is eligible for $298,000 of principal forgiveness and an interest rate of 1% for a 30-year term. The city received 2 proposals from interested firms. Each proposal was evaluated by each of the selection committee members. It was decided that both firms would be interviewed. The selection committee consisted of Daniel Williard and Daryl Walker, part of our water team, myself, Karen Labonte, and Jeff Adams, our planning director, Trevor Mount, the assistant public works director, and a member of our public works committee, Scott Hudson. After the interviews and reference checks, there was unanimous agreement on the top ranked firm. The recommendation to council is that council authorize the staff to award the contract to Windsor Engineers in the amount of $140,900.
Discussion? I need a motion.
Move to, well, go ahead, Mike.
I move to approve the contract award to Windsor Engineers for the Water Resiliency Phase 1 project.
Second. Everybody on last chance? Jennifer?
Counselor McCarthy? Yes. Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Counselor Risley? Yes. Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Mayor Seidel?
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Karen. Okay, at that, I'll close the special meeting and we will start our work session, which is the Ecology Western Oregon rate review.
Mary, each year we have Dave Larma, our rate analyst from Recology Western Oregon, comes and presents the collection rates for the coming year, which in this case would be effective July 1st, 2022. Staff has no recommendations at this time for council, but I'd like to introduce Dave and have him go over this year's reports. Dave, can you hear us?
Dave's
Sorry, I can hear you. Can you hear me? How about now? And how about now?
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me here tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to attend via Zoom. We have multiple meetings this evening, and it's hard to be in two places at once. My name is Dave Larmuth. I'm the rate analyst for Recology Western Oregon. I have a brief operations update and then the rate request for your consideration. Joining me tonight also on Zoom is Chris Carey. He's our new regional manager.
Hello.
Chris is new to Recology, but has several years of industry experience. We also had another management change. Scott Meathy, who's been with the company since 2003, was promoted to Coast Operations Manager. Hiring has been tough for us. We're running close to a full crew. It seems that every time we get all the seats full, someone steps down or steps away, and we need to be on the lookout again. It's hard to find new drivers and mechanics at this time, but if you know somebody that's looking for a stable job, we are hiring. On the customer service side, we are having staffing issues in our customer service department. We're down a couple of positions and we're training some new reps. This can impact the customer hold times. Our staff continue to work remotely. We do have some reps that cannot connect to the phone system over the internet, but they can answer emails. That means sometimes the fastest way to reach us is via email, and that's rwoinfo@recology.com. And that email is on our website and on our bills, but it's always nice to remind folks that is an option for reaching us. On to the rate review. In 2021, we had no increase. The 2020 adjustment was 2.9%. Our revenue has been close to projections. But we are seeing larger than expected inflation. We had CPIs 8.5% recently. Our labor expenses are up due to higher wages and increased cost of benefits and projecting to have a full crew. Our disposal costs are up, which includes the proposed increase at the transfer station. The transfer station costs are up due to increases at the landfill and then the increased cost of transport. Our yard debris line item is up significantly due to a large increase in the rate that we're charged by Trails End when we bring material to the site. And as you just discussed, fuel is up significantly for us over last year. According to AAA, diesel in Oregon is over $6 a gallon, while a year ago it was running about $3.40 a gallon. So that's definitely hits us hard. Our other operational expenses including the cost of carts and containers and parts and trucks and the computers that go in the trucks and the chips that go in the computers that go in the trucks are all tough to find. And when we do find somebody that has them, that they're selling at a premium price. And so we're just getting hit hard on those. Most of that gets chalked up to supply chain issues. Our projections show we'll be inside the operating ratio range specified in our collection agreement of 88 to 92%. As a result, we're requesting a CPI-based adjustment. While the CPI came in at 8.6% this year, our agreement caps CPI-based adjustments at 4%, so we are requesting the 4% adjustment. For the small carts, the 32-gallon carts weekly curbside, the increase is a month with a new rate of $28.97 per month. The rate change for a 90-gallon cart weekly curbside is $2.18 a month with a new rate of $56.72 a month. I also wanted to bring to your attention, we've adjusted the debris box ton rates by 8% to reflect the increase in disposal rates at the transfer station for garbage. Debris boxes are the large metal boxes we deliver for remodels, new construction, and other large projects. Customers pay a haul fee plus a disposal rate per ton for the material in the box. We also had an increase from Trails End of 11.22% for construction and demolition material. These changes can be found at the top of page 4 of the rate sheets. So those rates are changing by other than 4%. Most of the rates are changing by the 4%. We're asking that you approve these new rates so we can get them on the books and in the computers for the July 1st effective date. That's all I have prepared, but I'm happy to take any questions you have. And as I mentioned, Chris is here in case you have questions that he's more suited to answer.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions or comments?
Thank you for all your explanations. It's pretty heavy stuff to hear.
Hearing nothing, do we have a motion?
We actually don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion.
It's information purposes.
Oh. There you go. I guess the garbage rates are going up.
No water.
It's nice to know why. So thank
Yeah.
you, Dave, for explaining it.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you for being there, Chris.
Yeah. You.
Okay, figure out what's next here. Tita. How about that? Yeah, right here in front of us.
Yeah.
You want to lead it off, Bruce, or?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. We had a meeting last week sometime, and CETA presented the findings from the 4 meetings that they had, and plus all the information that came in on surveys, et cetera. And they presented what they felt they had heard and presented that to council and to the public. And at the end of that discussion, there was a request from CETA to clarify certain items. And so we decided to have this special meeting. And it has sent you a list of questions that will help them to kind of narrow down what they need to be working on as they develop the next step, which is the program for the facility. Dustin, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Just thank you again for letting us be here tonight. And as always, we're excited to meet with you folks and work on the project.
That's Dustin and Kelly. I'm sorry, your last name? Douglas. Kelly Douglas. That's Dustin and Kelly. I'm sorry, your last name? Douglas. Kelly Douglas.
And Maya in our team.
Oh, that's right. Maya's on.
She should be online. She's our director of interiors at CETA. And Jennifer Beatty, our president, was going to try to join for a period of time as well, virtually. So as Bruce mentioned, where's Maya? There she is. So as Bruce mentioned, last week we presented our findings to council from our community outreach events. And we determined towards the end of that meeting with our next deliverable to city council being the program for the project that it would be beneficial to spend a little more time with you folks to really hear about your goals and interests and concerns for the project. We've heard a little bit smattering here and there throughout the community outreach events, but we thought having some dedicated time to talk about what you would like to see in the project before we get into final program of the project would make some sense. So we did send a list via Rusty of some questions for you all, and we did get a great response from Mayor Sam. Appreciate that. I'm not going to go through all of those, at least not at the beginning. I'm going to focus more on kind of the big picture things that we're hoping to exit the building today with consensus. The first of those questions is regarding the possibility of this project being in multiple phases. The reason why I bring this up is after hearing the vision that the tribe has and that the community has for this project, and from what I've heard from council, I think that what this project wants to be to serve all interested stakeholders probably outweighs the current budget. So I would just like to understand if city council is amenable to a phased project, and phased in that all of the current budget would go into a phase one, and phase two and associated phase two budget would be at some point in the future. And perhaps more phases.
Yes. I think that I agree with you. I think your budget is limited for all of the projects that we hope we can accomplish. And so just as an example, I think the kitchen, starting out with maybe the basics and options for building it as it goes forward, that might take a little planning, but it could become a big kitchen situation, but we don't know what the demand will be yet. So I think it's really good if we could put all the things in place, so when we have the money, we can do it.
Okay.
Can I comment on that? Sure. There might be another option. We have a budget of 5.5 million. We have 4.6 in hand, and we've spent quite a bit of that money doing the roofs and some other things. We have always intended to borrow to finance this project. And when we get to the point, which will be somehow tied to the city hall, we still have what I would call some headroom, and the funding source that we're talking about is probably $450,000 a year, and the 4.6 is $242,000 in annual debt service. So we do have, if the council decides at that time, we could borrow more than the million that we were talking about. So I think you've got the option to phase, or you have the option to move ahead with more of the project when we get to that point, once we know more. So
What about grants
I think grants, and that was one of the things.
instead of borrowing?
Well, yeah, and we can go for grants. Grants will most likely be for a particular item. And so we'll look for those when they come up. Members of the tribe have said that they would help us with that. CEDA said they would help with that when we did the interviews. But I don't know what might be possible through grants, and we will pursue those. But if you don't, I'm just saying that we have enough room, I think, in what we're likely to receive for that funding source. And we're probably a little bit more than half of the funding is spoken for in the debt service. But that's also one of the items, because it's tied to the TLT, that's also one of the items that tends to escalate relatively quickly in the current environment. So that's just another option to doing the project in phases.
Well, I think if we're gonna, it makes sense to do it in phases. But in my mind, first phase ought to be complete the gym, complete the classrooms. And that's what this whole thing is about. Let's now complete it. How complete? I think there's where you can begin to take a look, like Robin said, maybe put in enough room for a grander kitchen, but start with catering space. I think in the gym, the large facility, until we see how it's going to be used, I think you might spend money unnecessarily anticipating uses that may not really happen. So I think we can make it clean, dry, secure, up to code, power, water, restrooms, all those sorts of things, but not try to, and I think at the time you do the insulation, you ought to pay attention to the acoustic. That's going to be a big part of everybody's concern. But I don't know, we need to, first phase, get very fancy with audio, visual, computer systems, projected sports courts down on the floor and all that kind of stuff. But let's get it closed in, usable, and we'll evolve into these other uses. I think depending on budget, the outside, and I'm talking about beyond the immediate vicinity, could be deferred. And I'm talking about things like the any work done for kayak and canoe launching, amphitheater, fire pits don't cost much, so that's probably move ahead. But it ought to be part of the plan. We recognize where we're going to go with that landscaping. And early on, and I mean very soon, we need to address the elephant in the room. That is the food bank. That food bank's going to stay there. It's going to alter their exterior plans and the use of that space. If it's gone, there's other things to be done. So I don't think they should design for two different cases. We need to address that. The actual, and let's say the decision made, we're going to move it and we can find a place, but it will be moved. Then we could defer the actual work on that during this first phase and do it in the later phases, once we know that that's not going to be there for a final design. There's the cleanup along the shore of the Ecola Creek. It's been like it is for a long time, probably could stay that way. Maybe volunteers get out there and cut the invasive weeds and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't see any work being done probably ever on just the bank itself. But the tree thinning, the relocation of monuments, different path works, I think those things can be deferred. The other thing that I don't think can be deferred, and that is a decision on parking. I think the city has within its power, authority, the ability to address the current standards for parking for a facility that has this much space. And we've got to address that. And, we can do it with codes, we can do it with waivers, we can do it by alternative transportation. And in looking at that, I think you'll come up with the fact that a drop-off center makes sense. A small parking for getting equipment in and out of the place, for ADA parking. A more short term can be addressed. But if we don't come up with those decisions real soon, our designers aren't gonna know what to do. What are we doing here? So we have to address, can we make Beaver one way and expand the parking? I don't think that's in their purview, but the city has to make that decision. And until we do it, I think they're kind of shooting in the dark. So, yeah, some things can be deferred, but I think the decision on the food bank, decision on parking, and parking includes the shuttle stop and drop off and a bus stop at some convenient location. Doesn't have to be right there, but convenient. And a plan for reducing the legal requirement for parking, so many parking spaces. So I guess I feel like those are questions the council needs to answer very quickly. And then some guys off coming up with a great design.
Well, Mike, I have to thank you. You touched on all three of my main issues that I wanted to walk out with some clarification tonight. So, if we're in consensus that this is likely a phased project approach, then understanding what the priorities for phase one versus what can be deferred for future phases is important.
Just let me ask about that.
Please.
Do you guys anticipate being able to present to us kind of a overall picture so that we then say, this is the critical stuff, it's priority, and then these will be the phase two, phase three, whatever?
Yes. So what we would propose is that we adjust our services a little bit. And, there's room within the budget to push and pull as needed a little bit. That we wouldn't consider moving forward with a phase one until we knew we had a good concept of what was going to happen for phase two, phase three, phase four. So, every phase before the next phase is the foundation for that phase. And we want to not have any costly do-overs based on unsound decisions. So, yes.
When Mike had mentioned classrooms and gym, but did you say restrooms too? Because I think those are also really important to have as the basics.
Yeah, I think that's part of the code. You're gonna have to have the.
Maybe a code issue.
My concern is I'm opposed to, quote, a public restroom in a event center. I see conflict of all kinds. I picture the Second Street, Spruce Street public restroom being right there on the site as we're having business conferences and different events going on. And here's the public milling around and with their dogs and kids. So, and it's a huge expense to have a public restroom. Not saying we don't need one, but not on this site. We need restroom facilities for the event center, but not an open to the public. That's my thoughts on it.
Not to mention the ongoing maintenance of something like that. I mean, look at how constant the maintenance is for both of these that we have. That would be really difficult, I think.
Yeah, so we ought to just forget that part of it.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, Robin.
So as Bruce mentioned, that is a code requirement and Mike as well. So we would anticipate that part of the phase one scope would be at a minimum meeting code requirements for things like plumbing and HVAC, heating and ventilation, and your electrical requirements, seismic requirements, energy upgrades for existing buildings that we have to do once we start doing some other upgrades. So I think by the time you look at all of these upgrades just to meet code, to get the buildings up to snuff, weatherized, safe for occupancy, that's going to be a significant portion of the budget in and of itself. But the good news is that, a word that you're going to hear frequently, and you already have throughout the programming process, is flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. And that's a good thing for budget, right? Because flexibility for buildings means non-dedicated spaces as much as possible. That an empty room with 4 walls in it is going to be much more versatile than something with dedicated equipment and fixtures in there. So from a budget standpoint, flexibility is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. That code, getting to code is phase one. That would be very easy for me to say.
That was important for us to sort of get consensus on tonight and an understanding of city council's appetite for a phase project, because one of the main concerns we hear back, you know, during our community outreach events is, do we have enough budget to do this right? So it's not, the interests are high, the goals are high, the vision is grand. But I'm of the other understanding that what's more important than trying to cram all that into the budget that we have is doing what we can now and doing it right. And then setting ourselves up for the next phase to do the next piece right, and so on and so on. I did want to touch on parking. That is, for us, one of the big elephants in the room. I think at this point, it would be good for us to know if a couple of things. One, are we going to be required to meet the city's code mandated minimum parking requirements on site? And by on site, I'm also including the Beaver Street frontage there. That's public right of way.
In my opinion, no.
And I agree. I'd like to see that be handled as more of a sacred place and not just a parking lot.
What would the requirement be for parking if we followed the city code?
Yes.
Well, so even within that, there's going to be some interpretation to be done. So there's relatively few categories in the development code when it comes to parking. For something like this, there's meeting rooms and then there's restaurants and lounge. And the difference between the two is significant. So for meeting rooms, the parking requirement is 1 stall per 100 square feet, so 10 per 1,000. And for lounges and restaurants, it's 1.5 stalls per 400 square feet.
And how many square feet are we talking about?
A total of about 12,000 square feet. So if we were, and there's all different kinds of ways to dissect this problem. If we were to look at intense use for all of the square footage for both buildings at the same time, that would be the restaurant and lounge use of 1.5 stalls per 400 square feet. You're looking at about 47 or 48 stalls total.
Yeah.
And to give you some idea of just scale and what that would look like on the site, we've got that existing asphalt pad out there. Just between the estuary and the classroom building. That is about 10,200 square feet of asphalt. Parking is about 300 square feet per stall. So to park that use, sort of medium heavy intensity of restaurant and lounge, we're looking at about 16,000 square feet. So 1.5 times the asphalt that's out there right now.
I really don't care for the idea of parking on that asphalt. I mean, I really don't want to see a breakup of the buildings from the land. I really like to see a natural flow from the buildings to the land without, you know, a bunch of cars in the middle of it.
And I don't think that's what he's advocating, putting cars in there. That's just a space that we all know and.
But I have
That's-
seen it in
yeah.
other proposals and I'm
Yeah,
interested
yeah.
and I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah, right.
It gives you an idea of the scale and the scope
Mhm.
of what our current code requires in square footage for parking. We could have. Our code really anticipates downtown commercial properties and residences and hotels.
Mhm.
We don't have a code for event centers.
Right.
So that's one way to approach it. Come up with an ordinance amendment for parking requirements for an event center. And part of that can be you have to have shuttle stop locations. And there's way, I mean, we're in charge of that. We ought to be able to address that and get it down to where we have maximize the parking availability on Beaver Street. And I don't know whether it goes beyond that or not. I'm not sure, but that's not something that these guys should be worrying about. That's our worry. But they need to know that we're opposed, and I think it's unanimous, opposed to parking north of the building. It's just, it'd be terrible. So our charge is to find sufficient alternative parking and sufficient alternative code language that helps us accomplish what this facility is going to require. It may require people walking a little further.
I think that we can also help ourselves a lot through scheduling. Like I think that the space that you're talking about would mean we would have something going on in every classroom and maximize the gym. And there's no sense for us to do that. We could have events in the gym be at night and the classrooms are closed and the other way around. So, and I can't see us having like a big concert in July or August. We would try to schedule bigger events like that outside of the main time. So we can moderate that ourselves.
Once we know the availability, then that helps the manager of that facility to do the proper scheduling.
Yeah, and we talked again, about a shuttle stop, a good bike parking facility, making it very bike friendly, those kind of things. So and you get credits from those. So, but I think there's a lot that we can do. And then I think the biggest impact is going to be scheduling.
Anything else about parking? I've made my comments. I feel like the blacktop is a security blanket for what's underneath it. Given that, what we use it for depends on what we need it. So an example is when we were doing our presentations down there, the public works truck needed to dump off some supplies. At that case, the blacktop's very handy for servicing. So in that sense, if you have classes in the classrooms or art going on, be able to deliver whatever you need directly to the classroom is very helpful. Doesn't mean it's a parking lot. That just means that cars can use it. That depends on how we manage it, not how we define it. And so in my sense, how we qualify what is already there is a usable surface. I would say at that point, how can we make it look nicer? How can we dress it up? How can we maybe add amenities that make it easier to use for other outdoor types of events? I know that the tribes have talked about their displays, and one of them is like an outdoor cooking presentation. Not what you want to do on blacktop, but depends on how they want to do it, and we don't know that yet. So an event at some point might want to have a presentation of like the canoe. You pull that in and you park it there. I've seen presentations that are really nice that use a trailer, or even like the blood bank, something like that. So I wouldn't dissent of its capability of using it. I just wouldn't call it a parking lot.
It could also be utilized for outdoor seating for events out in the green, with nice weather. There could be some perhaps more permanent benches, park tables that don't that piece of space so they don't interfere with the ability to deliver services to the facility. But it doesn't mean it's got to remain a black, flat surface unadorned with any landscaping or amenities.
One thing I would say is that having a paved surface out back would help to allow people with disabilities to be part of an event that's going on outside in the park. Either, you know, in wheelchairs or using a walker.
Right.
Good. Well, that's great. We got through all the major items that I wanted to get through much quicker. So this is wonderful. Something that we could dive into maybe a little bit more detail on. So we use this phase one, we're getting the buildings up to code, usable. The point was made that, and in Sam's response as well, that as these buildings become usable and are used, that the mere fact that they're being used is going to start to drive what becomes of the spaces next. What is the need? Or to inform the program for that next phase as well. For now, when the building is, let's say, in its baseline state, so it's upgraded, it's ready for use. You walk in the front doors, it's not booked for anything. Is it your intent that when it is not booked, it's available to use for the public for, say, indoor recreation or some other use?
I would like it to be.
Yeah. Okay. The question from there is going to become what indoor recreation, because some of it, basketball, for instance, we would need permanent striping. Ideally, we wouldn't be playing on concrete. Same with volleyball. You know, yoga, exercise, walking. Walking would probably be fine on the concrete, but again, I think there's been some interest in having indoor walking with designated tracks, so you know how far you've walked based on the number of tracks, you know, the number of laps that you've made. And again, in the back of our minds, thinking flexibility, and not wanting. Pickleball stripes are different than basketball stripes. And, you know, some of that we can overlap and some of it is not as easy. So I think having some prioritization of what types of indoor activities, especially those that require striping, is going to be important to define.
I played basketball in the gym when I was in the YMCA. And it was the only time I ever done this, but it was carpeted. And the carpet had all the lines, you know, built into it. And so it was, you know, it was a giant living room that you could play basketball, played volleyball in it. They weren't, it was before pickleball. But the only difference I noticed was that instead of bang, 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 it was the ball just hit lighter. But I don't know if that's still considered viable, but what they were able to do was to produce all the lines and, you know, in the carpet. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we have done multi-purpose rooms that have incorporated basketball, not with the lines, but that is also doable. In fact, Maya would be the one to tell us just how doable that is with carpet. She's smiling. Maya, what do you think? Is that?
Well, I've never done basketball striping on carpet tiles before, but we've certainly done it for the multi-purpose, multi-use resilient flooring, where they can do the sports court lining and that sort of thing. So my suspicion is that carpet with the lines on it was a hack maybe done, kind of like, hey, let's try to get this put together. But I'm going to start researching and see what I find.
Due to acoustics in that room if they did
Soften
it.
them.
Yeah,
It would greatly.
orbit too much.
No, wouldn't have, it's not that much. It's not, I mean, it's not like a plush carpet or something. It's very thin, you know, similar to what this is.
And that'll be another question to get to is priorities for acoustics, but
And pickleball, would it also bounce very well?
So it would be fine. And you like you see in a gym, they've got these discs on the floor that you can unscrew. And then that's where the volleyball pole goes in. And you could do the same thing with, if there was pickleball to be in there. So you could have it do all those things. And then also you could, have, it would be more pleasant for events than if it was, well, definitely better than concrete, but I don't know, if we tried to do wood laminate or something in there, how that would all work out, but, it is something that, but yes, but we could go ahead and put those in, and those, don't really come into play unless you need one.
I just think of the cleaning aspect of it and sanitation. I mean, that would be my only concern.
Since where the wood laminate makes sense.
Sure. And they'll be able to bring us options as far as the materials and all that.
I come and get a little bit detail-y here, but having played basketball in there, that is actually a tight court. It doesn't have, if you can get almost the full proper size, but you have no wings. You can run right into the wall. If I would be inclined to do that, I would consider a half court striping for the basketball. Volleyball, pretty easy. You can actually line up pickleball to one side with the volleyball lines. So you might be able to actually marry all the lines together if you consider a half court. That also would get rid of one of baskets so that we don't have to worry about that hanging over our heads all the time. Though I would really miss those. Those are cool. I'm disinclined to the fabric just because we're going to be getting sand in there constantly. And that's just a maintenance issue like crazy. And the old floor, God, I remember for years we couldn't wear shoes in there. We always had to take our shoes off. So, which was a heck of a lot of fun. Anyhow, so I would love to have some research done on a fairly nice paintable floor, so we would get the proper striping in it. But also in that same sentence, I go back to the flexibility of maybe I want to be able to restripe it when we realize we want it differently. I don't know how much that goes into, because I remember them painting that floor several times.
Yeah. I'm not sure how important it is to have official sanctioned size for every court. I mean, people playing badminton really care that much. It's not tournament badminton, it's recreation. You set them up in your yard with however much space you have, and you still have a lot of fun. So pickleball, badminton.
Pickleball players take their line serious.
Get over it. It's not, we have them outdoors. We
Don't
have them
know
other
about
places.
that. We got lots of votes for pickleball.
No, they want to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that basketball can take the whole thing. We're saying, let's compromise and go half court, and maybe it has to even be a little narrower. If we want to have the flexibility to have more than just a pickleball club, then I think we need to address how realistic you can set up. You can't have all these different sizes. You got to have the ability to have the high nets one size, the low nets another. Anyway, I think that needs to be looked at. If we start saying this is only pickleball and we want all these courts out there, not fair to those that don't want to use pickleball.
So part of what we would do in schematic design, so programming is the next step is we bring you a program as we understand it to be. That's our next meeting with you all, first week of July. We'll make whatever tweaks to that after our meeting, and that becomes kind of our basis of design for me. In schematic design, one of the first things we would do is start laying out what this multi-sport gym floor can look like. Is it one half-size court, or is it several just courts that extend out to the 3-point line, and a free throw key, and the center accommodates 2 pickleball courts, a tennis court, and a volleyball court. And that's going to start to get into the importance of how the building gets managed. and where city council falls on that and who determines what's set up and is it a first come first served basis? Is there staff dedicated to setting that space up and tearing it down? And maintenance and all that.
We got to keep in mind, none of these things we're talking about right now are going to draw tourists from 50 miles away and spend the night. This is all focusing, all this conversation has been focused on the community needs. We can't lose sight that this is an event center for the tourist industry, primarily with the public having access to it anytime it's available. So.
And I apologize, that's a little bit by design. And the reason why I say that, again, in thinking flexibility. The reason why you see so many multifunction spaces be able to accommodate sports is because you do it in a big room with 4 walls that can accommodate just about anything else. So anything you can do what you can do in a gym, you can have conferences for, you can have exhibitions, art displays, shows of various types. From the list I have from Mayor Sam, a lot of what's going to draw in tourists, what the kinds of events are going to be outdoor events. Well, that you need big open space for, which thankfully is something that we already have on that site.
Tourists going to appreciate an indoor sport facility during inclement weather. There's no doubt about it. And the better utilization we get of that space, the more sound our investment was. We shouldn't limit to just 1 or 2 things. I'm just saying we can't let 1 or 2 things drive the use of that facility. And there you get back to your flexibility. So
yeah.
And Mike, a little different take on, what we were talking about. And that those are the kind of things that if you have something set up, if it's, if we have a bridge club every Thursday, and people from outside are going to come and play if they're, they're in town or whatever. If there's an opportunity to go someplace and exercise, play some volleyball, if there's, groups that want to go in and use that. So I don't think, I agree that probably the outside is going to be a bigger thing as far as people coming to see, what we put in. But the use of the rooms, if the hotels want to try to encourage small conferences, things like that, those the flexibility that they have, plus the ability to go and, shoot baskets at lunch or something.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the management. It's how we want to use and set up, and it goes to the timing of, how and when you do set up and all those kinds of. So I think that the outside is probably going to be more of the draw, but inside is really what kind of made us think that this might work. We're trying to go ahead and pull groups in the, proper meeting rooms and things.
I've actually seen a lot of really fancy hotel event centers where they have to bring in the dance floor.
Yeah.
In order to find a nice smooth,
Yeah.
floor. So we were just kind of the opposite. We could bring in run swatches and say, okay, here's the runway for a wedding or something. So, yeah. Flexible.
So with flexibility comes the need for storage.
Yeah, that's
challenge. So that's one thing that we'll be, working into the program is ample storage space. I think we can, maybe the last thing for the gym for now would be, we're designing for flexibility, we're designing for adaptability for future phases, but also wanting to meet the needs of now. If we can talk about acoustics real quick. What are we catering to in terms of acoustics? Because acoustics for a concert is going to be different than an acoustical solution for a single speaker. It's going to be different than an acoustical solution for trying to keep it quiet while basketballs are bouncing around or people are playing other sports in there. So, and again, this goes back to thinking about it in terms of what's your baseline condition.
Mm-hmm. My suggestion would be, because I did go in with Thistle and Rose and tried to set up in different places. And the acoustics now, if you were to put it on the south end and you try to listen on the north end, and their amplifiers and all that, that if you were on the north end, the acoustics were very bad in that you heard it the first time when it came by you, and then it comes off the back wall, and then you heard it again. And so it becomes very muddled. So what I would think that musical events like that, be it just, as a side part to something else that's going on, which we did our first event with. But to try to take the, the real negative parts out of the gym so that you can have somebody speaking, so that you could have a play, so that you could have music without the gym competing with itself because of the sound bouncing around. So I would try to neutralize that, because in its current state, it is very limited because of the acoustics.
Yeah, just thinking of a typical event where you have rows of tables and chairs and people there, and up front is a podium with speakers coming up and making presentations for awards or announcing the bingo number or whatever. You can't, I don't think, just focus just on music. People have to be able to hear from one end to the other.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, if you are on the north end and you were amplified to talk, it doesn't work at the south.
Yeah.
So we're saying you need to I don't know, maybe it's deaden the room some in order to allow things to occur without yelling.
It's an interesting room, and just to add the fact that the choir thinks it's perfect.
Right.
So there is, the damn word keeps coming back, the flexibility of how do we tune that room as we need it. I had a nice long conversation with Jay Shaw the first time. And we were talking about all the possibilities of low tech acoustic manipulation. I feel like he's on it. So I'm dying to find out what he is doing and can come up with.
Yeah.
I know, having worked in the theater, that fabrics work beautifully for a lot of that. So it might be that could figure out some sort of hanging system for fabrics and start doing some testing with what you can do with that. There's an extra expense in that, and there's a lot of technical aspect of trying to figure out how to hoist things up or paste them to the walls and all that kind of stuff. But I think that would be my first goal, is to try and look at that before we go into some of the high tech deadening and all those kinds of things. So, okay.
That's something to consider too, for as we get a better understanding once the facilities are being used, what the demand is when there's a budget in the future and a more articulated, this is what we need great acoustics for concept, that you can start to really manipulate some of those acoustical qualities with, your higher end audio video systems. And it's not necessarily all about the geometry of the room and the types of materials and whether they absorb or reflect. You can handle it with sound masking. You can handle it with other things that I'll have to let Tricia speak to.
One thing I'd hate to see is that we put so much stuff hanging, lights and sound speakers and so forth, that you lose that impact of this cathedral shaped facility. I mean, that's the first thing you see is architecturally the parallel lines, the arches, the crosses. And if it ends up looking like looking up from a theater, all you see are bars and rods and lights, and you don't want to. I know nobody's in planning that sort of thing, but you start putting pieces across and then the other way, so you have flexibility to tie panels in or put partitions in or curtains, fabrics. Then you start to lose, I think, some of the real aesthetics of that building itself. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And so we'll be very tight with our specifications as far as not just the acoustics and, you know, the performance aspect of all these different infrastructure pieces that you need for any type of a performance, lighting and sound, but also for, you know, we still have to determine, are we sprinkling this building? And if we do, how do those sprinkler lines get run? What is your HVAC system doing? Is it a main duct running down the center? Is it a big spiral duct with branches coming off, laterals every so often? Or do we try to just do it with one big trunk line and no laterals to try to preserve that sort of barrel vault shape of the roof? And same thing with electrical and water and all that stuff will be very carefully considered, and we'll have our eyes on that during construction by means of shop drawings and everything to make sure that they're being run with that concept that, you know, in mind.
Through a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And takes a lot of diligence on behalf of the contractor as well to make sure that their subs are doing what's planned. Maybe we can move on to the classrooms real quick. And something I wanted to talk about with respect to that is I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of work in the classrooms themselves that really need to be done programmatically to meet this flexibility concept. We will end up not having the single occupant toilet room in each corner. There's going to be some seismic improvements that start to limit a little bit the amount of glass that we have facing out towards Beaver Street, and but maybe opening up on the other end out towards the estuary. But something to consider there is what size of functions do you want to be able to hold in these classrooms? Because one thing that could be done relatively easily is to take one classroom or two classrooms and open them up to an adjacent classroom with a folding partition or something else. So the thing to consider there is you're sacrificing something to gain something. So if you do that, you're gaining space. So each of those rooms are 1,000 square feet as they are right now. Set up as a training room or a meeting room or a classroom, that's anything between 30 and nearly 60 people, depending on how tight you want to pack them in there. If you're looking to do something that could accommodate 100 people or 120 people, then we would need to look at the ability to open two rooms to each other. The sacrifice is budget it takes to make that happen. Again, not a big ticket item, but something to consider, but also you'll never get the acoustics of a folding wall that you will from the walls that are there now. So if we were to do a folding partition solution and you've got two separate functions going on in adjacent rooms with just a folding partition in between them, you could run into an acoustic issue.
How many classrooms are there now in there?
It's a total of 4 classrooms.
And
Four and some
that's
office.
after the entrance area and okay.
And there's also an office on the east side.
And how big is this room?
Yeah, tiles.
Yeah, we just said 30, Nancy, in about 2 minutes. A little more than 30 by 30.
Okay, so
I think
it's
like
about the
30 by
same,
36 or something like that.
Yeah.
it's about the same size.
They're pretty close to the same size as the chamber building room.
Uh-huh. You know, I just don't see that we need a very large situation.
Well, I
We
don't
have
know.
those at the hotels.
Well, we don't have very many at the hotels. Well, I mean, we have the big surf sand, but
An ocean.
but that's
For the
need some kind of a medium size. I mean, if you're asking the hotels to consider bringing in conferences, small conferences, people are going to need a place to meet. And you might get anywhere from 50 to 60 to 75 people. And I don't think you're going to get that many people in one classroom that we have now. So you might need to have some kind of an extension ability to meet that. I know when I did a lot of event planning for Toastmasters, we needed that kind of a size of room, anywhere from 60 to 100 people. And the hotels in Portland, of course, have them, but I don't think we have them here in Cannon Beach. And that was one reason why that effort that the chamber had several years ago to bring in small conferences. I think that was one of the problems they had. That the very few, I think maybe Hallmark has a meeting room that might be around that size, but that may be the only.
And Tolovana does too.
Yeah, right.
The two rooms would be about the size of the Tolovana space. Together.
Tolovana that big?
Yeah, the Tolovana
It's
Inn.
a little wider, but yeah, it'd be about that size.
Are you talking about our building?
No, Tolovana,
I'm sorry.
hotel, condominiums, meeting room of the swimming pool.
Yeah, the ones we did the Dune
Okay.
meetings in.
And Robin, to answer your question, this is roughly 1,200 square feet.
Okay.
Oh, here, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking if they had a big room like that, they could go to the gym.
They could what?
Use the gym. I mean, I worry about the acoustics part of the classrooms. Anyway.
That was my thought too, is that they're good. I don't know if we would ever have, that big of an event in one of the spaces. But that if it did outgrow it and you could set it up in the gym and it would be the only purpose in there.
But if you had two different types of meetings going on.
Yeah, that's a good scheduling issue. I mean, I don't know if you would build around it saying Sunday we'll have two.
Because usually when you go to a conference, you have like 2 or 3 different sessions at one time to choose from.
Yeah.
So if you're meeting, one group is meeting in the gym, where's the other group going to meet? Classroom would be the place that you would consider.
I would go back to our flexibility in the fact, to me, having 2 rooms that can become one bigger room is really beneficial. I've been to a lot of conferences where they have all the rooms divided up into little breakout rooms, and then by the time you're ready for lunch, they open the whole thing up and you got a huge lunch thing and a lecture. So I think that the acoustic issue is not as dramatic of a problem as the ability to have a slightly larger space that is comfortable. The gym is great for bigger, but again, you got to heat the damn thing. When this would be in the winter, a very comfortable room for I'm thinking like an art show. One room is nice, but slightly bigger space where you got the wine bar on one side and the stuff going on. So I think the flexibility of having that capability, it depends on how you do the opening. If it's a full-on opening and there's just one big room with the dividers, or whether it's a partial opening, you could literally do it with a set of French doors and have a really interesting space. So there are folding doors that you can double layer too. So they fold inside and open up. That gives you the extra acoustics. So
Okay.
that's what these guys are going to give us ideas on.
How many people can be in a size room like that in one of the classrooms?
We went through that and this is considered 2 rooms. Because where we're set up here versus that. And I think, do you remember, was it about 40?
39.
39 for this room.
You would have to have 2 entrances on fire code. So that would be an issue when we get there, but for 40 it'd be good, but I've seen over 100 in the chamber building when the fire marshal was
When we
there.
weren't supposed to have it that way. Yeah.
Well, it seems to make sense to take one of the walls between 2 and make it a foldable. And I know there are different qualities of those accordion or folding doors. Because I've been in meetings where you could hear everything going on next door, and it tended to be a one wall, truly accordion. Those are no good. And others are big massive things, and so they become expensive.
Exactly.
But it's possible, and it is in line with everything else we've been saying, flexibility.
Yeah. This also kind of goes to your first question about priority. How much construction would be beneficial to do that ahead of time? So it's like a first priority, or could it be something that could wait, until we realize that we want that space? I don't know.
How important are each one of those walls in that building?
Those walls, those are all bearing walls. And
Pick one out, we need to replace it with a beam of some sort.
Yeah.
yes, and we also have to have a share accounted for in that direction as well. So what we would end up with is not removing a full wall. But we could potentially remove most of the wall with the beam and a column on either side and footings. And what we could do is, because we know that there's going to be some seismic work done as part of just bringing this thing up to code, that we can account for those openings. And basically, there's not going to be any shear here in the future designed for that now.
There you go.
And then it won't be a problem in the future. You're just dealing with gravity in the future. So your post and beam and
So if you made one room flexible like that, you'd still, I mean, two rooms would have to be connected. Flexible, you'd still have two other classrooms to have smaller groups in, or, whatever displays or whatever happens there. Yeah.
then, Mayor Sam, I'm glad you brought up the priority question again, because one thing, we can program all we want at this phase, and we'll try to get close and matching program must-haves and wants with what the budget is, but we are in the process now of securing a CMGC. And once they're on board, they're going to be doing construction cost estimating and really helping to fine point the program that we can have. And what I tend to like to do is to under promise and over deliver. So to say that, let's focus on getting gym and the classrooms up to code, weathered in, safe, and there, once we start getting pricing from our CMGC, really start to so that, okay, what would be really nice to have? We got past the must-haves, which is just getting the buildings usable, functional. Beyond that, compare everything against the budget, real-time budget. And nothing that's in the program has to stay as is. We're still, as we move into the next phase in schematic design, we may have changes of opinion or fresh perspective that start to change the basis of design, and that's okay too. We just try to get close for now.
Great.
If we can move on to the site. And we've already talked about parking. If we can talk a little bit about what existing site improvements or just site features such as vegetation or the bank was discussed. But what is off the table in terms of being able to be manipulated in some way? It has to stay. We've heard from some public stakeholders that all the trees, all the vegetation has to stay as is. Others that, the major significant groves, yes, keep those. But if you are looking to put an amphitheater in or some other outdoor amenity, that it's okay to start looking at replacing some of those trees and maybe mitigating elsewhere on site. So
I'd personally like to see all of the trees stay. As I was driving home the other night, I looked to the west and there aren't that many trees there now. And so to remove any at all would take away from the natural part of that whole site. And the stability of the bank. Personally, I think the trees add a softening part to that whole property.
My comments are in there, but just a little note. I went over there the other day because when I walked around with Joyce during the last event, I noticed that there were some little saplings west of the turnaround. In that area towards the dunes. So I went over there, I was curious, how many were, I counted over 20 just in that area. New trees coming up. And then I wandered over to where we had planted several Earth days ago along there, and they're all healthy. Plus, there's a bunch of new ones, look about this big. So saying keeping all the trees, you gotta be careful, because we're gonna have to manipulate some of those new ones in better places. But I love the fact that they're doing it on their own. I would say we've done this for a couple of the salmon ceremonies, as we have had a bonfire just in front of the welcoming man, just to the west of the welcoming man on the beach. That is a really good place for that kind of ceremony. Whether it's just a hot dog roast or an actual salmon ceremony or something like that, that's that little area where the lifeguard tower is quite often stored. Really neat space. We have to manipulate some stuff over in there. I would say that's worth it. The bank, as soon as we clean that up and get all the invasives out of there, I'm really curious to see what it's going to look like and how we can improve upon that. But all of the mature trees, definitely, I would try our damnedest to save them. The grove behind the food bank has an interesting moss cover that I've never seen anywhere else. That it's such a pristine moss lawn. It's fascinating. I hope we can maintain that.
I do too. I think it's really cool back in there. And I think we need to make a decision about food bank.
Yeah, when we get to the food bank project, that's a different project. But when we get to that project, that could just relate to that grove so well.
Really, really cool.
Do we expect to have a decision on the food bank, whether or not it's staying on site or being relocated?
It comes to you folks
The July work
for
session.
the July workshop. Is the first session, we'll be bringing back data about.
Good. Well, my sense is it stays there until we have a firm decision on that, but there we go.
Yeah, we don't want to go homeless.
The other outdoor thing, and I mentioned it in my thing, is when COVID started and everybody was freaking out about what to do, we had a group that were very, and this is actually was started before COVID, very thinking heavily about doing a community garden. And we're just looking for space. In that, we were talking about the area just between Gym and First Street. It was east of the gym.
Out of the wind.
Out of the wind, but also really out of the way of the main field for activities out in the field or whatever else we were doing. I do think that that is still a sound idea to address for future, again, priority thing. The garden's fairly straightforward and can be done. But it also creates a really warm addition to that entry to town aspect of what you see first when you're driving across the bridge. So a pretty garden, new trees, the flowering trees that are there, and the facade of that west structure, all can really relate to the natural aspect of the site. So again, I've said that on my list, but I do think that that is I'm not going to say an absolute, but it's sure it's fun to work with.
Nothing else, just to not do something with that space to allow you. I'm understanding you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking as I'm driving into town and you see a garden with a patio or a plaza area and something happening, some people doing something there, you immediately say, oh crap, what is that? I want to be part of it. So I don't know, that's both very community oriented, but it's also very advertising.
Well, in Seaside, just driving along
Yeah.
there where
They're
Mary
very-
created all of that garden is very pretty and inviting.
like that.
And just a consideration, is there, I would imagine that there's an ample amount of gardeners and camp.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If they had a space, we'd probably be growing gardens.
They'd be there, yes, yeah. The one concern I have is the elk
Yeah.
and how to preserve the garden and allow the elk what they're gonna do, so.
Sacrificial plantings right up the way.
They don't eat lilies and they don't, there's quite a group.
Don't eat huckleberries either.
Hmm?
They don't eat huckleberry.
Oh, or probably Salal.
They love Salal.
They love ivy.
I love geraniums.
Great, this is all extremely helpful. I think we can jump back into the gym building real quick and talk about maybe the mezzanine. And if there is the current problem with the mezzanine. Counted the number of, I think it's 5 or 6 different levels. So assuming that there was an accessible way to get up to that mezzanine level for public use, once you're up there, it's kind of an accessibility nightmare, making it difficult to use for public use. Going back to an accessible way to get up there, if it's used for the public or any use that's not provided on the first level, it's an automatic trigger for an elevator. And that's, in today's market, 2-stop hydraulic elevator, minimum of $100,000.
But the 2-stop wouldn't cover 5 of the elevations. Seriously, I mean, because I was looking at that too, because you can't. Yeah.
2-stop.
But even with 2, you still got stairs to get to different places.
Ramps, yeah, end up ramping.
My first response would be just to define it so it's not public space. It could be storage, could be office space for the staff. It is a functional space. It's a beautiful space. It would be really fun to try and use. But I understand that that would be so invasive to put a ramp or a stair or a elevator into the building. And cost prohibitive for me. So I guess definition is more simply usable.
Well, even as storage, you've got to get whatever you're storing up there.
That's the problem with having.
And I don't want to be dragging chairs and tables up there, that's for sure. So I don't know how
I think outside of the box.
Like the old barns. Pull the
Old barn with a pulley and a hoist lift, you can get chairs up and down real easy. I don't know about the safety issues and all that kind of stuff, but access to that room with a hoist would solve a lot of storage problems.
The other thing to consider about this particular discussion is there's interest in all stakeholders, the tribal stakeholders and large interest in the public stakeholder outreach events as well, that there's some visual connection between that space and nature, that Elk Creek to the north. That building does not accommodate openings in the barrel vault portion, which is the majority of the building. So really you're looking at views out the north end wall or views out the south end wall, which is just a public right of way into houses and businesses. So the greatest opportunity to provide that visual connection would be out that space, which would mean, that there's not a mezzanine there blocking that
My thought too is since we have to add things like restrooms and a kitchen and storage, that's the obvious place to put it. You know, there are probably ways to do it other ways, but that's the obvious place to put that. And trying to figure storage in that configuration and like the kitchen, it's really chopped up into small spaces. And I don't know if it lend itself to that, and I'm not sure how it would lend itself to handicap accessible restrooms. So my thought is that we could do something more efficient with what's there, possibly make a big window across the top of it or something, but I don't know where else we would put the kitchen, the restrooms, storage, that sort of thing, and still keep the mezzanine unless we put it in front of the mezzanine. Because remember, there's 2 rooms upstairs and they're separated by about 5 steps. So
to me, that mezzanine just doesn't make any sense. It's difficult to store, it's difficult to access, it's difficult. Because those little windows, you want to open it up, not open it up for the public to see, not just living up in the attic. And the restrooms, if they're going to be restrooms for the entire facility, I don't think you want to be walking through the gym to go to the restroom. It seems to me that where the current office is probably a better location. But I mean, this is you guys' job, but you got to think, you want access from the meeting rooms, you want access to the restrooms from the gym, the large room. So somewhere in between seems to make sense rather than down at the end, the north end of that gym just doesn't seem like a place you'd put restrooms for the whole facility.
I'm not sure that we can. They know the code, but I'm not sure because you really have 2 different buildings. And I'm not sure you can say you go to the bathroom in that building. So I'm not sure if we won't need to provide for both.
I've always envisioned the bathrooms to be in the school part.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I don't know if from the code standpoint, though, if you, that's all. It's just, it may be a code issue because they're truly 2 different buildings. The way that.
Unless you tie them together like they used to be, but make a better tie-in so it's one building.
But Jennifer and I today finally took the duct tape off our wrists and started talking design and, you know, kind of what we were thinking made sense. And the site is complicated with property lines right now. And that's something we're currently, I think the surveyors are out on site this week. The wetland flagging and then the topographic and property line surveyors will be out next week. And we can see on tax assessment maps that there's a property line in between the 2 buildings, which automatically, without putting in a firewall, would make that 2 separate buildings. And Bruce is right. At that point, you have to treat each independently in terms of restrooms, minimum plumbing fixtures required for each.
So are they 2 separate parcels of land?
Parcels. However, there's other factors that go into that too. And we're looking at, you know, if we end up sprinklering the buildings, that it may make sense to sprinkler just the gym and not the classrooms. If we do that, we'd have to put a party wall in between the 2 anyways to define them as different structures. But from a code standpoint, we would still probably be able to consider them one continuous building and just have restrooms in the obvious location, which for us, at least at the moment, is going to be at the east end of the classroom building.
Where they are now.
Where they are now.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, if we could avoid it anyway, doing excessive plumbing in the gym, I think that would be so cost effective for one thing, but also beneficial for the use of the space. And everybody, as far as using it in town, is accustomed to that. I mean, that hasn't had restrooms in it since 64. So
there's currently 2 restrooms in it.
they're not working. They haven't worked since 64.
No, they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the 2 little ones in the back, yeah. Anyhow, It might be possible to put like a handicap restroom in there or something like that, but I wouldn't. I'd try and avoid it as much as possible myself. But again, I've laid out my preferences and I'm trying to hear from other folks, but my sense of the building is, yes, it would be really nice to have visual aspect to the rest of the property. But that building isn't meant for that. It's not designed for that kind of outdoor interaction from indoors. It would be nice, I agree. Too bad it was built the way it was and had the services on the riverside and not lift. But I think the use of the spaces that are there outweighs for me the view possibilities.
Well, if you took the mezzanine out and opened up that whole end, you could create the storage rooms on the south end of the gym. Open space, you just build walls and design the storage space to meet the requirements for the number of chairs and tables and lighting and whatever else you might put in there, and not feel that you're constrained by some pre-existing mezzanine structure that really doesn't serve the purpose. So I just see that, in my view, just coming out and then having a more open end. So it wouldn't be the entrance, but it.
And that is certainly a benefit of not having the mezzanine there, is that now you've got more space and more flexibility. Which is, the flexibility piece obviously is key. However, the good thing about a mezzanine, and something, even if we got rid of this mezzanine, something to think about with that space, as you look at putting functions in there, like we'll get to the cooking function here in a second, but let's say we put some level of kitchen in that structure. It doesn't need to be 30 feet high. What kitchen is 30 feet high? So that room has height that we can take advantage of. Now, what programmatically does it make sense to put on that second level is something that we can work out. But it's just something to think about, right? Is as you start to use up some of that footprint or non-flexible spaces, think about it in terms of, if you don't need all that height, 30 feet, what can we start to do above that space that makes sense in support of your interests and goals?
That's interesting. I could see what Mike's talking about. I think that would make a very interesting facility. My thinking, I'm personally attached to the building, so I have troubles separating myself from that, but I understand it. The thing I guess I'm going to say is, how much would that affect the budget? Full remodel on the inside of that thing is going to be expensive. Maybe if you guys could work out some of the numbers on that, so we have kind of a core situation. I could see it. I could see that working really nicely, actually.
Yeah. So, in the future, if you wanted to end up opening that north end of the building, which is easy to do on the flat end walls, it's not a problem. It's the curved walls, rail walls, that's a problem. So there's not much for view out that south end wall. So there was a lot of feedback that made a lot of sense to us during the community outreach that, if you're gonna put non-flexible programming space in there, that you put it on the south end and leave the north end able to be opened up, if not now, then in the future.
You could also make a more interesting entrance from the south.
You can still have a mezzanine up there.
Yeah.
It also opens, windows and a usable space. Bruce has mentioned a couple of times managing this facility. So somewhere there has to be a place for the manager and staff. Really talked about that.
And you hit it on the head. So it goes back to how we plan to manage this. So if we're going to have a dedicated staffer for setting up the space and scheduling the space and managing that facility, probably need to have an office in there for them somewhere. Is maintenance going to be on site, or is that, you know, a third party that comes in? And basically, do we need a maintenance room and office, or, you know, is that something that can be? I don't know.
Just right this minute, I'm gonna have to take a 5-minute break. So, and then we'll come back to your next question after that. Okay, 5 minutes? Okay, we're good. Okay, we're back. Back to Dustin. You got more questions for us?
And just so you all know, I'm almost done asking questions. However, I had just give you a heads up. I've got one more question really that'll probably evolve into a couple, but if you have any questions, just here in a couple of minutes. If you have additional questions. So the level of kitchen. This is a big one. Discussion in my head where I'm categorizing this is if there is budget left in the project after we get all the must-haves, that we provide some level of kitchen that is adaptable to be intensified or enlarged for more intense use in the future. Let me know if I'm off on that. And my recommendation for that would probably be that if there is room in the budget, we look at doing a catering kitchen. A catering kitchen is scalable. We can scale that up to a commercial kitchen in the future. It's also sort of reverse scalable in that it can be used for a simple teaching kitchen or demonstration kitchen if we were to incorporate, for example, portable induction cooktops, and just make sure that we provide storage for those. So it's kind of scalable both ways. It'd give you the most versatility now, the ability to really intensify the kitchen use.
You would have a refrigerator, however. And I have done catering in the past, and we usually brought things in, heated them up, however you needed to do that, and then took everything off site.
Yes.
So would you need dishwashers, that sort of thing?
I don't think you're required. You can do your dishwashing offsite, although from a convenience standpoint, it might make sense to go ahead and not necessarily, maybe at this point, it's not a dishwasher, but a 3-basin sink.
But provide space for a future one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you hit it on the head as far as a target going up or down. I like that. I think when I was talking to Bob Neroni about a teaching kitchen, it got a little fancier. But and then I was looking at the facility that he has. But you know, the size of his kitchen is tiny.
The equipment in it is something else.
Quite a bit. But he's able to do quite a bit with what he's got. So, and the fact that we've got 1,000 square foot room, as if you were used a classroom, that's just an example. You've got a heck of a space for expansion. So, I guess I'm more curious. I'm not up on what is required for the code part for a commercial kitchen. The venting, I know that you have to have the big onion vent on top and the traps and the grease traps and all that kind of stuff. I understand that. I just don't know the totality of it.
Yeah, it's fairly significant. So the commercial kitchen is going to be defined by, you know, a space that is used to prepare food for the public. At that point, there's sanitation requirements. The types of materials that you can use in there have to be easily scrubbable, even the ceilings. You have to assume that if you have a commercial range in there, that there's going to be grease latent there that needs to be removed. So you've got a type 1 hood there. You're going to have a different type of hood above if you have a dishwasher in there, as opposed to just 3-basin sink for removing just water vapor latent air. And then food handlers license, permitting through the health department. it's quite a bit involved. Now, it's a major asset to have, especially for an event space. I don't want to play that down at all. It's a whole different beast in terms of budget and in terms of licensing requirements to be able to use it.
Is there a qualifier as to how many people you serve when it becomes a commercial kitchen?
I'm not familiar with anything that discusses, threshold as it regards to the number of occupants that are served by that kitchen as to whether or not it's considered commercial versus non-commercial. Are you familiar with any provision that way?
I don't think it goes into how many people are served. I think it's literally about in what way are you preparing the food? To what level is the food prepared there on site, or is it mostly prepared off site, brought here to be warmed and then served?
And I think it'll be driven a lot by the occupancy, I would think.
Right. And the other parts of that equation is who is it prepared for? So you can have a training kitchen in there that's set up as a residential kitchen, or excuse me, a community kitchen that could also be used as a training kitchen, set up as a residential kitchen with a residential range and not all these crazy commercial ventilation requirements. But the scalability of that isn't there. You'd start all over again to get from that to a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
So just quickly to pipe in on some of that, what we've done on those kind of teaching kitchens. And again, I don't know necessarily that that's something that you're interested in per se, but if you're bringing in the community members to help, and I think some of that might pair with some of the conversations we were assuming perhaps with the food bank, is teaching those that are using the food bank supplies how to cook these nutritious foods, and it's part of that educational experience. And part of the reason that you do just residential type equipment is that that's going to be obviously more similar to what they're going to have at home. Whereas if you bring them into this big grand commercial kitchen, it's overwhelming and they're afraid to use the stove and they don't know what it all means. So I think having that conversation too about the intimidation factor potentially and how we want to ease maybe into that, phase 1 to phase 2, if you really do as the end goal want to have a commercial kitchen. I think those are some of the conversations to have on that.
That's good. That's good information. I keep going back to our one event that has a lot of food, and that's the salmon ceremony. That's generally a potluck. So that is basically bring it, warm it up,
right,
serve it. That would be initially the other side of what Maya's mentioning, and the fact that the teaching kitchen is perfect. The way she presented it as something relating to the food bank, and just to, somebody showing up, showing you how to bake a cake. Great. So great place to start.
Yeah. That's a major benefit to having the food bank remain on site, is that if we have a kitchen as part of the program, that becomes a major asset, not only for the event function of the site, but also for the needs of the community that are, the individuals that are actually utilizing the function of the food bank.
I did have a chance to talk with Miriam. There was a comment made that there was very little input from the Hispanic community. So I went and talked to Miriam. She cooks at the Mariner Market. And I said, what would you do if you had this facility and you had a kitchen that you could present to? She was just bubbly all of a sudden, because she would love to be able to show her friends what she does better than what she's allowed to do at Mariner, because she knows how to cook traditional. And the other thing was that she started talking about how everybody brings their food and warms it up, just like we do for the potlucks. So I thought, okay, same thing.
That would be fun to have her demonstrate.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, put that on the list.
I thought you had everything on there, but. Well, I think that concludes my questions. Maya, did you have anything specific that you wanted clarified in this meeting?
I think you've hit them already.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
I think we're in the same line of priority lists, so.
Yeah, no, I feel like this has been incredibly useful for us to then be able to take this information back. Again, we had really good representation from, the public and the tribes, and how being able to incorporate what we've learned in this conversation into a programming proposal for your consideration in early July. This has been very beneficial. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
for coming
you.
down and helping us work this out.
I just had one question.
Go ahead.
You haven't addressed, or maybe I missed it, what you see happening to the existing storage rooms that are on the east side of the building?
So there was a fair amount of public input that was, please get rid of them. They're unsightly. The architect, maybe the non-architect in me says they're there. We need storage space. And they would be a good use for, they're on the main level of the gym. If we were to look at, in this first phase of getting rid of the mezzanine, and again, that's in the bucket of, well, we look at that if there's budget left over and we'll address that at the time. Should that happen, we have all this additional space for tables and chairs and even greater storage needs. So I would say for the first phase that we would probably end up proposing leaving that as is to be used for storage for tables and chairs and nets and balls and the whatever we need to support the anticipated functions of that space under this first phase. And then as we look at future phases and maybe we do end up doing some level of storage with a freight lift that goes up to a space above the kitchen. I'm just shooting from the hip here, but at that point, when we're looking at utilizing the height that we have in that space for some program that's going to benefit the use of the space like storage, then we would probably start recommending, okay, now let's start paying a little more attention to the aesthetics. The building, that little lean-to structure that I'm proposing we use for storage now, or likely proposing for that, is not very sightly, and it would probably be more aesthetically pleasing now.
Mm-hmm. I agree with everything you said. Just hadn't heard it yet.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and if anyone else has anything that I didn't brush on today or in previous conversations, I'm happy to give my thoughts on it.
Well, I still like the idea of being able to look out through windows or something to the north side toward the creek. So if there's any way, and I know we discussed it a little bit in terms of using the gym, using that mezzanine space for that possible thing. I'd sure like to see it. I really like the idea of being able to just look out and see that expanse.
There's all kinds of things about that concept that appeal to me, but at the top of that list is, the first outreach meeting we had was with the tribe. And I was expecting more when we got into, okay, we had our meeting with the tribe, now let's go meet with the public, that there was going to be a lot of conflicting interests. And I think I've said it before in this room, just humbled at how much those interests align. And one of those specifically was the visual connection to nature from inside that space. So when I look at what small things can we do that appeals to everyone across the board, that's kind of one of the low-hanging fruits for me.
Yeah, it's really, I find it pretty important to do that.
Did anybody else have any additional items maybe I didn't cover today that I can.
I'll think of them as we get.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Please don't hesitate.
Dinner. Yeah.
Hesitate. If you think of something on the way home tonight, get them in an email to Rusty, he'll forward them to me and we'll address them as part of our proposed program.
Great.
Good job, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Okay, that takes us to go to the order. Thank you.
Nope.
You want to talk about this?
Well, I just want to provide those to you so that you can see what our schedule is going to be for bringing on the architect for City Hall, which we've done probably about September 1st to the first week of September, followed by the CMGC for elementary. We'll go to about the beginning of October. And finally, City Hall CMGC goes out to about the beginning of November. So we phased everything about a month apart. And to try to be able to go ahead and not have the same thing going on twice. And it's frustrating because these things do take an awful lot of time to get done. And it's me nuts, but Rusty and Jen said, let us draw it out so you know what it's real. There is a, and you can see each color, each project has a different color, but the we have 4 weeks for contract negotiations. And I think we can cut, maybe 2 weeks off of that. Because the first time we did the negotiation with CETA, we didn't have a model. And so we were, going through all the AIA things and all that to be able to go ahead and get that first one. And we have a similar situation with the CMGC. But we're farther along at our starting process. So this is what we'll be looking at. And then all the individual dates are here on the other one. And at this point, I'm looking for the City Hall, police station, architect and engineer. The evaluation team would be at this point, Jason, me, Rusty, Barb Knopp, and then Jeff or Trevor to round out that group. And when we get into the CMGCs, it would be probably Rusty. I've had discussions with John Nelson, and he said it's something he would like to do. Myself, Jeff, and then Doug Craner from the Public Works Committee. Did a lot of work with the Corps of Engineers, and so he would be a good addition on there. And when we do the CMGC for Cannon Beach Elementary, it's part of CETA's contract to assist us. They won't be a selection committee member, but they clearly have worked with these people and those kind of things. So they'll be helping on that one. And we'll probably be able to get the same type of help when we go for the CMGC for City Hall from the City Hall Police Station Architect.
Does that mean that if John Nelson is part of the CM, whatever it is, contractor?
CMGC.
Yeah, he can't bid on that project?
They wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we had. He said, I'm out 3 years.
Yeah.
Take something like that on. And also it's really outside.
Projects of that scale.
Yeah, yeah. So, but he said he would like to, use his skills to help the city.
Okay.
And so he would do it. And then Doug, he said, absolutely. Just, tell me what the timeframes are.
Yeah.
So I can't say for sure that each one of those will still be on, but I can see that Barb left, but I went after her first. She agreed to do the architect. I thought it was probably way outside of her wheelhouse to hire the CMGC. So that's why I brought in John Nelson and Doug.
So just for those who are listening and might want to know, the architectural RFP process or the hiring of an architect for the City Hall Police project essentially concludes in the middle of September. And that is when the design process would begin. And we would follow hopefully a model similar to what we're doing with CETA.
Yes.
So people are always wondering about when we get to have input. It will be next fall, this fall. Okay. Thank you, Bruce, for this.
That's really helpful.
Good.
That'll fit in my bag.
Make it work. The other thing is, don't forget, we have a meeting at 8 o'clock on Friday with the Chamber Board.
By the way, the sandcastles were absolutely beautiful this year. Very clever. One was of the whale and they had written out kaboom on it. Well, we blew up a whale once to get rid of it off the beach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that. Kaboom.
And another one was a family who had gone to Europe, so they chose different structures to build, and it was really a wonderful family.
Good weather too.
Yeah.
As far as Sandcastle, I went down there for setup. It was a really easy setup because there was not as many builders as we would like. We would love to start expanding our pool of builders again. Debbie Nelson was having some issues because it was so late in the day that all this stuff was odd as far as setting things up for their end of it. But when I went back downtown, everybody was waiting for the after to start. So they were milling around downtown, and I thought healthy for the business.
Yeah.
Compared to in the past, when we have a really early contest, it starts in the morning, things around noon, everybody goes home.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a challenge if you had more people, but there was a ton of people around. Interesting.
Great
Also,
weather.
we're going to the order just briefly. Rick's not on, but Antonita had starting the PHS, whatever they call their program, but it's an emergency management program. They're setting up a presentation. It is on Thursday. If any of the council has been interested, you can go down and walk through their presentation Thursday at 11, I think. I went down there to set up.
Yeah.
And tomorrow, they're doing their actual internal drill. I will go to also. So that was interesting. Those folks are really into what they're doing.
I've been for years.
Where the poor Manzanita CERT folks were trying to catch up.
Also, we had a day with Astoria, Gerhart, us, and the county, and the hospital, and several other functions or emergency management functions. And we did Cascadia event, and we did it. It was kind of interesting. It wasn't from the start. It was like we're on day 6. So we all had to adjust what we were, what's done, what's not done to just get, those kind of things. And it was interesting and showed a lot of holes, but what we're doing, and again, Rick is doing a really good job at this, is that we're all going to have roles in on what happens. There'll be somebody who will logistics, somebody will be the incident commander, operations, all those kind of things are going to be happening. And we're all kind of taking turns doing them because as the incident commander, you do certain things, but you don't go out in the field to see what's going on. You talk to the operations person. The operation person gives you that report so that somebody has to be here all the time for that. And we have communications. Our communications has come so far. We all now have radios that we can communicate with each other and police. Well, we can't communicate with police, but we can hear police, we can hear fire, all those things happening. So I think we have like 130 channels or something. So there's a lot of cool things going on, and a lot of things when we're thinking, well, how do we do this? Well, the cache site will have power. The cache site will have this. you know, those kind of things. So a lot of good stuff happening in emergency management side.
Great.
We have coffee with the counselors next Monday, 10 a.m.
Boy. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
You're gonna do,